I'm.Yaz Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies Podcast Video Edition. So, Josh, do you have any brand loyalty when it comes to athletic shoes?
That would imply that I do anything athletic in shoes. No, I guess I tend to default to a Nike. I don't really think that much about my athletic shoes because I'm not a runner. I don't run that much. And then I'm basically going to DSW and looking for whatever seems like a decent enough workout shoe that's not too expensive. The one thing I will never get, though, is a Hoka. I think those things are so ugly.
They're so comfy, though. I had a pair of Hokas, and
I'm sure they're comfy, but they're
also
chunky. I've
just
got big feet as it is. If I put those things on my feet, I'll look like a clown.
I mean, my husband hated them, but I was like, they have so much support. My knees are kind of fucked, and I felt like they actually really helped. I was using them to run errands. But aside from that, I've done Nike, I've done Adidas. I'm fairly price sensitive when it comes to this stuff, especially if you're...
Yeah, me too.
If you're running a lot, which I used to do, or working out a lot, you run through them pretty quickly.
Pun intended.
Pun intended. That said, I have actually always wanted a pair of On shoes, but frankly, I'm not willing to pay that price.
They do look nice. I do like the look of them.
I think they look really nice. My parents really like them, but I am not rich. That said, we did talk to one of the co-founders for this next segment. 15-year-old Swiss athletic shoe and leisure wear company On did the almost impossible. It found a way to compete with the likes of Nike and Adidas in a crowded athletic shoe market. Now, the company controls 6.6% of the performance running shoe category in the United States, and it's also expanded into other categories like apparel and hiking shoes. In 2021, the company went public on the New York Stock Exchange. We spoke with co-founder David Allemann about competing with big incumbents, getting an investment from Roger Federer, and the company's innovative physical retail strategy. Here's that conversation. I'm excited to talk to you in part because my husband is at Harvard Business School, and last week his case study was about On and On's shoe subscription program. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about, all of the steps you all took to get the business where it is today. So let's talk about marketing first. On's initial success stems in part from grassroots marketing efforts. But last year you signed a multi-year partnership with Zendaya, and now you're involved with FKA Twigs too. Tell me about how your approach to marketing your products has changed over the years.
A lot. At the beginning, we were a very, very small brand, starting with an incredible innovation. And I think the biggest thing that we had going for us, and I show you one of our first prototypes. So that looks quite old now, but we had a very visible technology, and showing the technology, of course, made everyone curious. And so that was our initial marketing campaign, that the technology is so visible. So people wanted to try it, said, wow, that feels so light, feels like a cloud sometimes. And so that was the initial phase. And so it was really, and has always been, a grassroots brand that pretty much grew through the community. So that's how we got a following of millions. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes you get lucky, and part of this community are also people like Roger Federer, who discovered us, or Cynthia, who discovered us. And so you enlist super fans, and so it was quite organic.
So I want to talk a little bit about your approach to wholesale. You were up against incumbents with big accounts, at wholesale places. I'm thinking Nike and Adidas. But you took a really interesting approach to ensure that those wholesalers were not discounting your product initially, at least. And you also sort of innovated when it came to payment methods and manufacturing methods. So you didn't hold excess inventory. Tell me a little bit about that strategy.
Now, for us, it was very important from the beginning to work with the best specialty run retailers. They have been our allies. And so we really made sure that they are the best ambassadors of our product, because if a new technology comes to market, you could be seen by runners as a gimmick. And so, of course, they ventured out with us over many launch runs. And so we made sure that they fell in love with our shoes. And so they really became our super ambassadors. And so for us, it has been incredibly important over the last 15 years to support specialty running, but then all our wholesale retailers to build the brand, and they have been incredible allies. So we are very much committed to wholesale.
I want to talk a little bit about your premium positioning. I would say your sneakers are sort of on the higher end of pricing, compared to like a Nike or Adidas, where they have really cheap and really expensive ones. Tell me about that kind of brand positioning.
I think we're an innovation brand, so we came with an incredible innovation with Cloud Tech, but then now also with Cloud Tech Face, with Light Spray. We probably talk a bit later about that. So we're really investing in innovation. And I feel over the last 15 years, we probably also have seen something where sports products went from just equipment to incredible performance products, but even beyond that, really becoming something that is becoming part of your uniform, part of your identity. And so I feel that's uplifting the whole category really now to lifestyle, but with a performance core. And that uplifting gives a brand like On an opportunity to build an absolute premium positioning at the intersection, of course, between performance and then also design, which is an important DNA strength for us.
So tell me about your approach to design. I mean, what does your design team look like, and what is your philosophy around it?
When we started out, we had a very clear vision that performance should be first, and then form follows function. So that's also a really Swiss thing. We're a brand from Switzerland. So if you think about typography, Helvetica, that's also typography where form follows function. And so we wanted to be a very clean brand, a very minimalist brand. And so that infused our whole design philosophy. There have been brands in computers, of course, that entered a complete new aesthetic of performance in computers that at some point was probably over-designed as well. And the same we experienced as well when we started in 2010, that a lot of running shoes had been over-designed. So we took a completely opposite approach, and I think that's present in our design philosophy. We've then created around that an amazing team of now probably 200 creatives and designers at On that are fully living that DNA, not just in footwear, but also in apparel.
What do you mean by over-designed? Can you give me an example? Can you give our listeners examples here?
Often when it comes to performance products, think for example, sports cars. The tendency for designers is I just decorate. I add elements. I add a spoiler. I add a thing there. I add a thing there. And the outcome is ultimately the attempt of performance design, but it's actually not adding to performance because it adds weight to a car or to a running shoe. And so actually we feel the best performance design is to take things away, to make it more minimal, to bring it back to the core. And so if you look at some of our shoes, it's very minimalistic and really focusing on the design. So that's, for example, our Cloud Boom Max that just came out. And so the DNA of form follows function is at the core of On.
You now have standalone stores as well, and I want to talk about the design of those stores, but also your decision to open them. Tell me what's behind that strategy.
We became a brand that connects to consumers directly as well. So in parallel to wholesale, we also started our digital connection and our e-com channel to consumers. And so that was in the early days, but now we feel our community grew a lot. And so in many cities around the world, we have an incredible community, a lot of run clubs, a lot of athletes that want to more closely connect with the brand as well. And we still feel, if you think about city centers around the world, these are still locations where you go to, where you have a memory of that city center, where you meet with community. And so we want to be present in communities around the world. So that was the inspiration. And then we opened the very first store actually during COVID at Lafayette Street in New York. So that was a bold move, and we try to innovate even in retail.
So tell me about that innovation. What does that look like?
When you go to a sports store, often you enter that sports store and you're greeted by a sales associate, and then you basically tell her your size, and then she vanishes to the back room, and then 10 minutes later she's coming back. You have a shoe, it's probably not the right size, she vanishes again, and so you're spending 20 minutes there, boxes are piling up, and you feel, I probably should have just bought on the website. And so we wanted to turn this around and going from actually just transaction really back to the interaction. And so we invented something which we call the magic wall. So you have a big, big wall when you're coming into On stores with all our shoes. And then we have a little magic trick, just kind of with a little pull, this magic wall opens, and behind each shoe, you have all the sizes of that shoe. So within seconds, you have that shoe on your feet. So a very simple idea, again, simple innovation, but which is completely transformative to the experience of consumers.
That makes a lot of sense. You've expanded your line quite a bit. I was looking on your site. You have accessories. You even have things like ribbed dresses, which you obviously don't necessarily play sports in. Tell me how you think about entering new categories and what that playbook looks like.
For us, it's important that we're a brand that is really part of your overall life, because I feel sports and everyday life are more closely connected than ever. Doesn't just happen on the weekend like it used to be, but now, especially also after the last few years and the pandemic, you go very fluidly between work, life, sports. And so we immerse ourselves into that, because our core mission is what we call to ignite the human spirit through movement. We feel when you move, when you run in the morning, or you go on a hike, or you do some classes, something happens to your mind as well. You're more awake, you're probably a little bit more optimistic, you potentially have a new ideas, or just a very calm mind. And so really being there for our community, whether that's now in footwear or whether that's in our newest training gear that we just launched with FKA Twigs, it's really a holistic sports brand that supports you in your everyday activities.
That makes a lot of sense. What categories are you going into next? Can you share anything?
Apparel is an incredible, important category for us. It's growing very, very fast. So we just had in the last quarter 75% growth year over year in our apparel category. And of course, retail, what we just talked about, and apparel is connected as well. Because if you want to really show apparel, you also have to be very, very present with your own retail to show the whole appearance of your collection. So we built our apparel and our retail in parallel. And I feel that works very well. We're seeing a lot of our footwear customers and our footwear community also now walking out of our stores with an apparel piece. And when you go, for example, to a gym, especially in the US, you used to see a lot of on shoes. Now more and more you're seeing us growing from toe to head, really to the full body with on footwear and on apparel.
On your company website, it says that 33% of materials used in top-selling styles in 2023, so that's a lot of caveats, were from recycled or renewable sources. As the company expands, how are you thinking about sustainability?
Yeah, so it's a super important topic for us because we want to be the most premium global sports brand, really rooted in performance design and sustainability. And so we think about that over three horizons. The first horizon is really being very selective on materials, especially recycled materials. And what you just mentioned, we're making huge progress. So, for example, polyamides, polyesters are already in the mid 80s of just fully recycled materials. But then I think a second horizon is that we're even developing our own sustainable materials. And so, for example, we felt it's time to suck bad clouds out of the air to create good clouds, which is a material which we call clean cloud. And so it's really coming from carbon emission, and then through a chemical process, we create the base ingredients again to do amazing foams. And so already 11% of our foams are made from clean cloud. So that's a second horizon to create through innovation our own materials. And then I think a third horizon, even more ambitious, to change our production methods. So when you think about light spray, that of course Fast Company has covered as well, that's a unique new production process where we pretty much spray a shoe in 3 minutes. And so just kind of the amount of reduction of parts that goes in a shoe, the fact that there's not a big supplier industry where you also have to move all these parts, and that you can even nearshore then the production is really reducing the footprint of production up to, according to our calculation, 75%. So that's a big new initiative that we're having, and we're very, very optimistic that this contributes to be a very, very sustainable brand.
You also launched a subscription program for one of your sort of super sustainable shoes. Tell me a little bit about the shoe, and then tell me a little bit about the reasoning behind that subscription program.
Absolutely. I mean, the shoe is, or the program is called Cyclone. And for us, it was an interesting experiment, a large scale experiment to basically see, hey, wouldn't it be fantastic that you don't store old shoes in your closet for potentially years, but give them back to us? So that was the base idea. And so we iterated and innovated on that a lot. And so ultimately we came out with a proposition basically saying, hey, you know what? You actually don't own the shoe. So you have to give it back to us to get the next shoe. And the interesting thing about running shoes is, of course, when you run a lot, they of course degrade. So it's a perishable good in a certain sense, not less like fashion shoes that you keep for ages. And so the idea has been, hey, you run through the shoes literally, and then give it back to us because you don't own them, and we send you a new one. So we have several thousand subscriptions now of very committed runners. So we learned a lot through that, and we also maintain that program. And it's one approach to really make sure that shoes come back to us. But we're also working on other approaches to make sure that without even doing a subscription program, people have the option to return shoes.
And, you can, I think, return shoes every 6 months or after running a certain amount of distance. And I'm guessing the shoes, if you're doing the subscription program, must be pretty beat up by then. How do you... I mean, it's like the thing with running shoes in general. People replace them all the time. How do you think about durability?
I mean, it's just, running shoes have a certain lifetime. So depending on your running style, between something like 400 to 700 miles probably. So of course they come back. And so then we have the opportunity to fully recycle that shoe and actually create new materials out of it that go back into our shoes. So it's really, as the name says, a cyclone, where materials come back to us.
What did that investment and endorsement from Roger Federer do for the company? How did that change the business?
when Roger, so it was in our year 8 of existence. So we had already scaled to, probably back then more than 40, 50 countries. So the brand had already taken off. But then something happened. So Roger was actually secretly inviting us or not so secretly inviting us to a date, because he posted on Instagram from the Roland Garros, the tournament, him fully non-shoes. And so we said, hey, that's an invitation to a date. And Switzerland is small. So some of our friends who know us all said, hey, we set up a dinner date for you. And so we went to dinner date and we just hit it off, because Roger is amazing, and we had so many angles, from performance innovation to lifestyle to athleticism. So we really hit it off. And so he decided to want to be part of the brand. But back then we said, hey, we're a very unclassical company. We're an innovation company. And couldn't we innovate on this a bit as well? Because instead of, in a classical athlete endorsement, us giving you money, why don't you give us your money? and that's exactly what he did. So he invested in On and showed his full support for On already in year 8. And so we have become co-entrepreneurs. And so Roger is here in the Blue Library when he basically announces that he retires. But during his retirement now, he spends a lot of time in our lab as well, working with teams on products and, of course, on marketing as well. So for us, it has been also, of course, a huge awareness boost.
You know, in terms of the awareness boost, how did that translate into sales? Or, you know, did you see a lot more interest in a certain sector like tennis? What did that look like?
Yes, of course, we saw a lot more interest in tennis. And then together also with our young athletes like Ben Shelton and Iga Swiatek, who just won now the Wimbledon finals, and João Fonseca, the rising star from Brazil. It created an incredible momentum. And so we went in with kind of some of the absolute culture carriers. Then we also created very iconic footwear, but also very iconic apparel. And then it didn't hurt that Zendaya was doing the Challengers movie, where she actually played also on tennis shoes. And so that all came together to build a great momentum for tennis. Actually, just outside of the building here where I'm sitting, we hosted a tennis tournament for Zendaya and Roger. They played in air tennis against each other.
Yeah, that was in one of your ad campaigns.
Yes, because Zendaya, of course, was so good in air tennis for her movie that she actually had almost the same good moves as Roger. And so she actually won the air tennis match.
It would probably be pretty unfair to make them compete at real tennis, though.
Yeah.
The second business milestone I want to talk about is you going public in 2021. Tell me about why you wanted to go public and also how that's changed the way you run the business.
We had an incredible growth phase in the first 11 years. And so having the ability for access to capital and also having access to some of the best investors in sports and the deepest investor pool, especially also on the New York Stock Exchange where we're listed, was really important for us, because our ambition is very bold. So when we went public in 21, we had a turnover of around 750 million. Now we're approaching 3 billion Swiss francs, so north of $3 billion this year. So our ambition is very high, and then having the ability and the flexibility to be a listed company is important for that growth. At the same time, we're very much focused on creating the next, and that is long term. So how do we build the next sport? How do we build the next category like apparel? How do we build the next geography? How do we go from e-com now also to retail. So we always plant new seeds. So that's not something that you do just with a short-term perspective on your next quarterly results, but that's very much kind of the DNA of a founder-led company that looks at the very, very long-term perspective of the brand that we want to build.
We've seen a boom in run clubs. I think a lot of people now meet their boyfriends or girlfriends through them, which is not how I would do it. How have you benefited from those, or have you seen a benefit from those?
Yeah, I mean, run clubs are literally the new speed dating. And so we are seeing an incredible amount of people that join the on-run clubs. So I think the one in Portland is now the biggest in the city. And so we're very proud about that.
Have you seen a bump in sales?
We definitely have seen an incredible growing running community that is connected to On. And of course, that's a leading indicator also for wider distribution and wider adoption of our brand.
What is your favorite On product?
My favorite On product is always the newest product because we work so hard on the newest babies, like kind of now the Cloud Boom Max or the Light Spray shoe, that of course when we as founders very focused on product innovation as well give birth to these babies, they're our favorite products.
What makes them different from the others?
So it's either a unique feel, like for example, also now in the Cloud Surfer Max with CloudTech Face, which is the newest iteration of our CloudTech technology, so constantly evolving, never standing still.
And what is your best-selling product?
So our best-selling product is not just one, but we have now 9 franchises, individual franchises that each contributes more than 5% to our top line. So it's not just a one-trick pony, and I think that's important. On is a very resilient brand that has 9 different franchises that are very meaningful in footwear, but then also now apparel, even accessories. So we're really building out our product line.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. I'm not going to lie. I've been a Hoka girl for a long time, but I am in the market for some new shoes, and maybe you've convinced me to try On.
Fantastic. So now that, was it your boyfriend had
Husband, yeah.
Your husband had the Harvard business case. It's probably the right moment.
Exactly.
Very good.
All right,
Super. Thanks
cool.
a lot. This was fun.